no matter what disease you might struggle with or health issue you might struggle with, stress will amplify that problem. Stress will make it worse. And in a lot of cases, stress is not just the amplifier, but stress can be absolutely the cause also. And it tends to, with emotional.
Awe Genge, this is Mental Matters, hosted by Asego Toto.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mental Matters. I'm your host, Asego Toto. And before we dive into today's incredible conversation, I have a small favor to ask. If you enjoy what you hear today, please take a moment to rate and review our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but also helps others discover the valuable insights we share every week. And if you find today's episode particularly inspiring or insightful, don't forget to share it with your friends, family, or anyone you think could benefit from it. Thank you for your support. It truly means the world to us. Now, let's get back into our conversation.
You mentioned growing up around healthy living and natural solutions due to your mom's struggles. Can you share a bit about her health challenges and how it shaped your passion for this field?
Yeah, absolutely. My mom struggled, and this is a long time ago. This is back in the 50s and 60s. Okay, but my mom struggled with the same things that people struggle with today, and that's feelings of anxiousness or anxiety. If you live life like that long enough, you tend to be a bit fatigued because that's exhausting to live that way. And then as time goes on there, you start to feel like feelings of depression or melancholy, or like you just want to just give up because this is too hard. And my mom had all those feelings as a young lady, like I said, in the 1950s and 60s. And back then, those feelings were not understood by the general population or by doctors. In addition, it was something that was almost embarrassing to have that feeling. So it wasn't something you really talked about. Whereas today, there certainly is a better understanding of, emotional health type issues. People understand that there's it's okay to feel that way. There's a lot of us that feel that way. And we certainly have a significantly better understanding today about the way that stress and maybe traumas and things like that play into that. And so I grew up with a mom who was incredibly passionate about food and health and nutrition because she literally changed her life, and the way that she was feeling as a young lady transformed it into a woman that was healthy, stable, balanced, and really had a passion for helping other people kind of come out of that same place that she was at. So I'm really grateful to grow up with really a front row seat to somebody who struggled with those emotional health issues, and then I've helped out thousands and thousands of people kind of work through that over the course of my life using, herbs and vitamins and amino acids and things like that to nourish the body and the brain. Because while it is certainly very much, emotion, touchy-feely, if you will, but it is also very, very much physical. And so we support the body and nourish it with what our brain and our body needs in order to be healthy and balanced and have a brain that functions well.
And I'm fascinated. And as you were telling your story about your mother and being able to be which she was passionate about nutrition, and it's something that I see that as actually, in all honesty, when I embarked on actually starting this podcast, I only focused on mental health. And when I say mental health, I say with depression, anxiety. That's what I actually knew what was actually mental health. So that was back in 2020, before, actually during COVID. starting of the year. So now, fast forward today, 2024, something different has changed. And I saw that mental health has different perspectives and different fields when it comes to this in terms of taking care of yourself and speaking about the body. And we can't speak about the body and not speaking about the mind. Nutrition is something that I've been occasionally learning. As you mentioned, in terms of supplements, vitamins, in terms of that. So, what actually made you? I understand that at some point that you were inspired by your mother to be in this field. What actually told you? What kind of was told you that I just want to be in this field? And yeah.
Yeah, so it really was my mom changing her diet and integrating herbs that made the change for her. That was transformational for her. And predominantly, I would say going from, for her, a diet which, back in the 1950s and 60s, here in the United States, there were all kinds of different herbicides and pesticides starting to be used in farming. And for whatever reason, that had a really big impact on my mom and the way she felt. So she started eating foods that were not sprayed with pesticides and herbicides. At that time, there was no such thing as certified organic, so you couldn't just go to the local store and get that. So she had to really seek out foods that she could eat that would not bother her. But what she found over time is that by taking specific vitamins and amino acids and minerals, and then some herbs that we refer to as adaptogen herbs that are helping our body deal with stress, that those kind of supported and lifted her body up to make it strong enough where she did not have then the same, negative reactions from her general environment. And that's really what kind of, through our research and homework and working with so many people, what we realize is that all of this really starts with stress. I can look at the stress that we have in our lives, and this can be emotional stress, but it's also environmental toxin stress. The air we breathe, the water we drink, the food that we're eating, and all of those things are stressors on the body that no matter what disease you might struggle with or health issue you might struggle with, stress will amplify that problem. Stress will make it worse. And in a lot of cases, stress is not just the amplifier, but stress can be absolutely the cause also. And it tends to, with emotional health issues, anxiety, depression, that type of thing, stress oftentimes tends to be the cause. And, we can look back at, an individual's life and say, wow, I can see that, I changed when I was young, when this traumatic thing happened, and it really formed the way I saw the world. And that's what we're seeing today as people are using the word trauma. What they're recognizing and understanding is that the anxiety or the depression is really just the symptom that I feel, but that's not the cause. It's just the symptom. So what is it that is causing me to feel that way? And oftentimes we can point back to some event or experience that really changed or reshaped, that individual's normal. It also has a lot to do with individuals that maybe struggle with different eating disorders or, people that might be overweight. A lot of times that all points back to some emotional thing that really changed, again, the way that their brain is thinking and functioning. And we can work on the brain and the body to kind of bring that all back to normal or back to balance.
Something that you said in terms of saying stress being an amplifier. Speaking on nutrition, we both know that for you, in terms of you to have a mental well-being that's good, a mental being that's healthy, you need nutrition and being on a diet. And some people have this perception thinking that they will eat all they want, whatever they want, not actually knowing that there are consequences on that. Would you say that for someone that It's eating whatever they want. And on top of that, their stress. Would you say that their mental well-being will be worsened when in terms of that?
Absolutely. So two things happen there. I mean, one, you mentioned, people that maybe don't watch their diet and they think, oh, I can just eat whatever I want and I'm going to be fine. And, then there's a certain extent of that. Maybe when an individual is young, that might be the case. But if you add certain stressors on to that individual's life, somewhere along the way, the lack of nutrients that they're getting in that food will catch up with them. And so again, the two sides of this, if we don't eat healthy foods, we will be deficient in certain nutrients, and that will, in fact, have a physical impact on the body. When you layer that with stress causes the body to actually need more vitamins, minerals, and I'll say healthy resources, healthy food, than an individual that wasn't under stress. And you can think about that maybe, no different than, if you are walking down the road, your body only needs a limited amount of energy. But if you're running down the road, full steam, your body uses more energy. We feel that. Well, a body under stress is really like a body that is running down the road constantly, using more of these resources. And so you're going to amplify again the deficiency that you have. And so that's really why we come alongside we make 3 very specific herbal formulas at Red Remedies for 3 different stress types. And that's generally what I find is that while, we can have 10 individuals go through the same exact stress experience, because we're all unique individuals, we can come out of that stress experience with different emotions. Right. So we have the stress experience or the traumatic experience, but then the emotion that we uniquely attach to that. And so I find that generally people come out of stress with one of 3 kind of primary experiences. The first individual will just be tired and fatigued, and that's a lot of us. This individual might be relatively healthy. They've got a lot going on, very busy, full active lives. Of course, full of stress, and we're just fatigued. And so that individual is always going to be looking for a stimulant, some caffeine, some sugar, something to kind of keep their body going. And so that's the first stress type, is high stress equals fatigue or low energy. The second type is the individual who comes out of that stress and they're very anxious, kind of the feelings of worry, fear. They can't focus or concentrate. So the brain might always be racing and spinning. And then the third stress type is that individual that comes out of that and they're just very low. That's the depressive, melancholy. That's the individual who's just like, I don't know if I even want to get out of bed today. So fatigue, anxious, and then, depressive are the 3 different types that I generally see. And I find that all of us kind of fit pretty nicely in one of those buckets.
You mentioned caffeine in terms of a person when it becomes in terms of having this fatigue and always looking for a stimulus. And it goes back to one thing that I had Dr. Smith that we spoke about vitamins, and he spoke about in terms of addiction, the same stimulus you spoke about. When someone actually always looking for the stimulus and they go to, in terms of, I would say, caffeine.
Yeah.
That caffeine works at a certain point, and at a certain point it stops working, and they find another stimulus, and then I feel like that's something that people don't realize, and that's where I believe that nutrition plays a role. And
yes,
in terms of nutrition, and some people actually, I feel like I just had a thought, and it's something that I'm going to ask you about, and because I was actually listening to a podcast, Modern Wisdom podcast by Chris Williamson, whereas they spoke about omega-3. So before, I have so many questions towards that. In terms of, you spoke about energy levels, and I just want to get into the concept of stress, toxins, and nutrient deficiencies